Well, I can tell you this. If this is the bargain that the Republicans are now pushing for, that we have to cut Medicare to avoid cuts in the Department of Defense, they ought to step back and take a look at this. Paul Ryan couldn't pass his budget in the House of Representatives.
And that dotted line was from Dick Durbin. He is the number 2 Senate Democrat, and he was on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace laying out what he said would be the parameters of where Democrats would be starting their discussion about what might be, probably not, but what might be the first budget that the federal government has had since 2007, and this is still power play. Hi, Internet. Now, let me say, we like change, but we also like solidity. So we can offer you lovely solidity in the person of Penny Lee. She is a communication strategist, as you know, of Venn Strategies, quite so. She is a Democrat. She is a former senior advisor to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, number 1 Democrat in the Senate. But meet Lenwood Brooks. Lenwood Brooks is a policy director, means that he knows stuff, for Public Notice. And Public Notice likes things on the fiscally conservative side of the street. Is that fair to say?
That's fair, Chris.
That's fair? Okay, good. Like it. Now, let's start with you, Penny. Democrats would very much like to get this, what we call sequestration, lifted. That's what they want.
Yes.
We're going to have, as a condition, how bad is Washington? Washington is so bad that as a condition of ending a government shutdown, both sides have agreed, rather kind of weirdly, grudgingly, to engage in the regular budget process. But the regular budget process is very irregular now. Democrats would like to see that lifted. But we see that the sequestration, originally designed as a penalty, is kind of popular. People kind of like it.
Well, I think it depends on who you're talking about. I think Republicans also would like portions of it to be lifted as well, especially as it relates to defense. And those are the cuts that are really going to take effect in January 2014. So they are hearing from a lot of their own constituents that defense also needs to be lifted out of this. I think the main thing that needs to be happening on sequestration is, instead of just a straight across the board, a little bit of flexibility. The ability for some of the agencies to be able to flex some of the funds in which they're doing it. I think Democrats, that might be the position in which they are willing and able to compromise.
It's the difference. The sequestration, the punitive, well, if you like spending, the punitive side is the cut. But what is supposed to be punitive for Republicans and others is that it's a haircut, and you're not allowed to channel it. You're not allowed, an agency can't say, we're just going to zero out this thing that we're doing with owls so that we can focus on non-owl related activities in our agency. You have to take it across the top, which means that some programs fall under the line of functionality. What's been proposed by a lot of practical sounding people like Penny Lee is that just give the agencies the authority to do it the other way. Lenwood, Republicans hate Obamacare. And I mean, they hate it. It's like chiggers. They are like so against Obamacare. Does the bad rollout help drag that into the discussion? They walked away empty-handed on Obamacare in the last budget goat roping. As they head into this one, which is in January, does the bad rollout make it more likely that this will be part of the discussion?
Well, I think we have to step back first here and realize that this is a budget conference.
Yeah.
They are supposed to report out something by December 13th.
Yes.
A budget is just a blueprint, too. So even if they do pass something, Chris, it doesn't actually make policy.
They still have to appropriate.
Well, they'd still have to actually pass policy. If they pass a budget that would implement cuts to Social Security, even some that President Obama proposed in his budget, that would still have to go through actual a law and have the president
say it was very likely, Lenwood.
But so the point is, this budget conference is all talk. It's all posturing. They don't even have a trigger to make them act like sequestration.
I know, we stipulate. But the point is, this is where the kernel of the deal is. Penny would know from her time in the Senate, this is where the kernel of the idea comes from. This will gag out some pebble, and then that will be the thing that is for the 8-month or 4-month or whatever plan. The question is, will the health law be part of that discussion?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, the Republicans did a lot of talking about that over the last few weeks.
I heard.
And and they didn't get anywhere.
Right.
So the reality is I might not have the educational pedigree of Senator Cruz, but I know math. and the Republicans are in the minority there.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of Mississippi.
Okay.
Hotty-totty.
Ole Miss. Okay.
We had a big Miss.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
But the point is President Obama is not going to make any big changes to his signature health care law, his signature policy initiative.
I guess you don't get a name like Lenwood growing up in the Upper East Side.
No.
All right. Okay. So now, Penny Lee, here's the question. Democrats are they're getting blame-ish towards Republicans about the problems with this law, the health law, saying that monies that could have been spent to help implement the law. Are they going to? Is that going to be part of the Democratic ask in the end in these budget negotiations for a little more money to help implement and get some of the burrs out?
Well, I mean, my goodness, $400 million to spend on a website is plenty. It is more than enough that needs to happen. I mean, we have a whole federal IT procurement situation that is completely screwed up. I mean, we had, when you give them, I was talking to some of my friends that are in the startup. And what their recommendation was, had you given them $10 million, they probably would have built a better site than $400 million with all of the complications in which it did. So I think we need to actually encourage some of the startups and some of the entrepreneurs in this world to come in and try to help fix and solve it. It's going to be really difficult.
They spent $400 million.
I know.
They're going to end up spending
another
$1 billion. They're going to spend $1 billion before it's done.
Unfortunately, they're probably going to have to spend another $400 million to fix it, which is insane. Crazy and should be.
We're so bad at doing stuff. This government is so bad at doing stuff. All right, Lenwood, the question then becomes, back to you on sequestration. This is something that was designed as a punishment. As I say, it's turned out to be fairly popular. Republicans, we heard Roy Blunt and others basically say, whatever else we do, just save the daggone sequestration. Hold on to something lest it become a rout. And deficits are down, and spending is down. So people who are into the fiscal conservatism thing should be happier, right?
Well, it's a start in terms of cutting spending, but I don't think anyone would say it's an effective way to cut spending because it's spending cut by formula. And when you're relying on formula instead of making the hard choices, it's usually not very effective. But I think the Republicans here are in a position of power because the Democrats have to come to them and ask them to change a law. Similar as the Democrats were in power because President Obama's health care reform is a law.
Penny Lee will agree with me, I bet. Fingers crossed. Penny Lee will agree with me when I say that in divided government, the side that wins is the side that is happiest with the status quo. And if you go into a situation and you need nothing changed, and that's where the Republicans are, they just would like on spending for things to hold, then they've got the upper hand.
Yeah, and you saw that in 2011 with the Bush tax cuts. Have them holding, would have been able to keep, and they had the upper hand going into it. I mean, there was the grand bargain that all blew up and everything else like that, but they were in a pretty strong position to be able to keep the tax cuts as his Democrats had to then make the forcing ask to get rid of them. So it is, it's perilous. I mean, it is my hope that we can have some adult conversations going forward. We do need to fix the fiscal situation that it is. I do think the deficit's too high, even though it is coming down, it is still too high. And we've got to have a real honest conversation about the entitlements because there's only so much more domestic spending that can be cut without really crimping down the economy. So entitlements have to be addressed.
Penny Lee, you find her marvelous. I know that you do. I know that you do, Internet, because it's just true. Thank you, Penny Lee.
Thanks.
Lenwood, question for you. Were you this pessimistic about the game against LSU?
Oh, I learned a long time ago with Ole Miss football, you can't have expectations.
So he has lower expectations for the federal government than he does for Ole Miss. I think we can put that on the books. Lenwood, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Chris.
You, Internet, one